Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over Blink Dagger. I'm going to show you what it does, how to use it, and when to buy it. So the first thing to look at here, as usual, is that it costs 2,250 gold, and this is like right in the middle of most items. It's not cheap by any means, but it's really not that expensive. The only thing that makes this kind of expensive or feel expensive is the fact that there are no smaller components to Blink Dagger. You just have to save up 2,250 gold to buy Blink Dagger, so you can't buy any smaller things to get there, and that can be somewhat of a problem or make it feel kind of expensive, especially if you're going for this item early game, like as a first or second item. But otherwise, it's kind of right in the middle or relatively cheap. And then what does it do? It has an active component that can blink you or teleport you 1,200 units, and it has a 15-second cooldown. The really only thing that you need to know other than that is that it can't be used for 3 seconds after taking damage from an enemy hero or Roche. So if there's some kind of damage over time being applied to you from, let's say, Venno or Queen of Pain or any damage over time hero, you won't be able to use Blink Dagger until that kind of whole spell has run out, or you purge that spell and then wait 3 seconds. So that can be important in a lot of different situations, and it's important to know because Blink Dagger is kind of a versatile item that you use in a bunch of different ways. So now I can show you how Blink actually works. It's pretty straightforward. You just have it in one of your inventory slots, and then you can just press it in a direction, and you can see the AoE is right there, and then you just blink to that location. Really that straightforward. And you can honestly blink very short. You can blink to the max distance if you want, like if it's over here. And notice that there's a small animation, those little blue pixels kind of floating. So if you're chasing someone or they're chasing you, they can kind of tell if you used blink because they could see that little animation. So that is kind of a hint for the enemy just to know that you actually blinked if they're chasing you through the woods or something like that. The other thing to notice is that there is turn rate in Dota. So if you don't know what that means that you actually have to turn kind of facing the direction that you want to blink. So if I want to blink backwards here on Axe, you can see that he takes a little bit of time to turn. Now there is kind of like a cone in front of Axe or in front of the hero that allows you to blink. I don't know the exact cone, but you can see that like if I actually use it, I don't have to turn fully all the way 180 around to blink 180. It's kind of like a 90-degree turn almost, and then you can use it. This is important just because if you're not facing where you want to blink, if you're not walking directly there, there will be a small delay. This also matters, let's say if you're OD and you imprison yourself and you want to blink out of that immediately. If you're not facing in the right direction, you might not be able to instantly blink. The enemy could maybe stun you, do damage to you or whatever, and then obviously you can't blink after you take damage from the enemy. That's also important on Puck with phase shift. There are rare instances that comes into play. It's not every time, but it does matter in general in the game that there is that turn rate, and you do have to take a little bit of time before you blink. The other thing to note about Blink Dagger is that I have it personally on spacebar as my hotkey. I will always put blink in this position. I think this is the best hotkey to have for Blink Dagger. You could potentially put it maybe on one of your mouse buttons, but I would say it's one of those. It's space or a mouse button, something that you can press while pressing everything else. So for instance, with Axe specifically, I can just blink call and I don't really have to think about it very much because obviously I'm using my thumb to hit it and then I'm using Q to just use call. That's the same for pretty much every hero. I just use my thumb here, and that's really the only hotkey I use with my thumb is the space, and then I can use anything else with any of the other buttons, my items or my abilities. I think that's very important when you're thinking about blink to have it on something that doesn't really take away from pressing any other ability, because you sometimes need to press blink and then instantly press something else. So that does come into play a lot. And then the last thing regarding hotkeys and blink is that it is important whether or not you have that space, whether it's spacebar or another, T or wherever it is that you put your blink, whatever the hotkey is, that you know whether or not you want that hotkey to be quick cast or just a normal cast. And so I personally have it on quick cast as my spacebar. And basically what that means is whenever I press the spacebar for my blink, it just instantly blinks my hero to wherever my cursor is. So you can see right there, Axe instantly blinked. The other thing, if we refresh here, is that if I want to blink as far as I can, I just have to, aim as far as I can, even further than you can blink, and then Axe will instantly blink as far as you can possibly blink. But some people will debate whether or not that is good, because if you put it on another hotkey or you put it on normal cast, basically here I have T as a normal cast hotkey for this position in my inventory, I can press T for blink, and then you can see it kind of highlights the area that I can blink to, and then my cursor changes, and then I can left click again to blink to that spot. And some people would say that's better because you can kind of just see how far it is that you can blink, and then you can click again so you can get your max distance pretty much every single time and really know that, okay, I'm getting closer for the initiation on Axe or Legion, and now I know I can get it because I can blink right there and get the duel off or whatever. And so there is some debate, but for me personally, I just like it on space to be quick cast because it is quicker, and I just have a feel for what the max distance is. But obviously that takes some time to get used to, and playing a lot and knowing what the max distance is of Blink Dagger. And even me, I probably don't get it perfect every time, so maybe I'll be a little bit delayed on my initiation times, that will happen, or I won't blink, fully as far as I can or think I should because I overestimate how far I'm able to blink. That will happen, some percentage of the time. But then I feel like that's better because sometimes I won't like fat finger it, because if you double press your Blink Dagger, you will blink back towards your base. So I don't want that to happen and to ever waste my Blink Dagger. And I also don't want to feel like I have to double click 2 buttons. Like I don't want to have to click it, click again, and then click a third thing. So for me personally, I just like the one cast, just not having to think about it, just instantly blink where you can go, just get a judgment, a feel for how far that Blink Dagger ranges, and then instantly do it and not really have to worry about like double clicking it or clicking twice or those kinds of things. So it is a personal preference. Some people might argue that it's better to have it not on quick cast, but I just personally like quick cast in general. So that is kind of a preferential thing for me, or just a personal take, a personal opinion, a taste thing, whatever you like the best. But those are the 2 ways to use Blink, specifically with hotkeys. So in terms of heroes that like to buy Blink, you can think of basically 2 categories. The first category is initiation. So a lot of those are, tanky strength offlaners, Axe, Legion, Tide, any hero that's jumping in, stunning, using a big spell, or just starting off the fight, jumping in on somebody. That is one category. But even in the same thing, you don't have to be a tanky strength hero. You could be like a Lion because you want to jump in and use Hex really quickly because that's an instant stun and they don't really have time to react to you jumping in and using Hex. So it's basically any kind of initiation hero loves to buy Blink because obviously that helps initiation. You can start from outside of vision, in fog, in the trees, whatever, just jump in, instantly use your spells and start off the fight or start off the gank. And then the other kind of hero that you can think about that really likes to buy Blink Dagger is any hero that doesn't have mobility but really needs to get in there in the fights to do a lot of damage. And I think the perfect example of that is Ursa. This hero might have a little bit of mobility on the Q, but otherwise you're pretty much just running at people if you don't buy Blink. So that's why Blink is so good, because you do a lot of damage anyway. Buying that Blink, it's not really costing you too much in terms of like forfeiting other damage items, and it allows you to get all of your damage off by just sticking on a target. You jump in on that target, you slow them a little bit, and then you smack them around for 1 billion damage. That's a perfect example. Or TA is another one. Does insane damage as long as she's able to hit the target. And yes, she's kind of like a pseudo-ranged hero, but she's not like a super ranged hero. She does have to be kind of in melee range, especially to get her meld off to do all that minus armor. So that's another perfect example. But heroes like Slark or Faceless Void or, Anti-Mage, these heroes obviously don't buy Blink because they already have some kind of Blink or mobility spell in their kit. Or a hero like Luna, Medusa, they maybe could buy Blink, but that's not really what they do. They like to just kind of sit there, be this kind of tanky, hard to deal with hero that if you fight into them, you're probably going to die. They get kited by just like people running around, not really fighting into them, or just making the, fight messy, where they like to just siege towers and stuff like that. But that's not what Ursa does. Doesn't really siege towers. Wants to just like follow up any kind of initiation from these offlaners like I talked about. So just really needs to add that mobility to the kit to make sure their damage can actually be effective in the fight. And then I did just briefly want to mention Puck as kind of this weird hero that already has some mobility, but it's slow enough that you really want to buy that Blink Dagger just to amp up what you're already doing. And you do have initiation, you do have a way to kind of get in and out of fights, but Blink just makes it instant, and it even makes you more annoying to deal with because you're already hard to track down and kill. And now with Blink and even, adding Yules, let's say, on top of that, it makes this hero almost unkillable in a lot of different situations. But Puck is a very unique one. I would say that like Storm Spirit, Ember, Void Spirit, these heroes, you're probably not buying Blink. Like, they already have mobility, Queen of Pain already has mobility. A lot of these heroes that already have mobility are usually not buying more mobility. Puck is probably one of the only ones that applies to, where you have mobility, but you're actually buying more. But for the most part, you have the other 2 kinds of heroes, the initiation kind of heroes that want to jump in, start the fight, stun, or the heroes like the carries that just need to get into the fight and do a lot of damage. And then lastly, there's honestly not too much to say about Blink because you don't really have to build up to anything. You just save up 2,250 gold like I talked about. But I will say that when do we buy Blink? Well, it's kind of interesting because this item is usually one of those items where you buy it like first or second. So on a hero like Earthshaker, let's say, which is kind of an initiation hero, you're probably buying Blink first item in a lot of cases. Maybe if you're core, you're going to buy Ags on that hero first. Or like if you're an Axe or you're a Legion, you're maybe buying a Blade Mail first because that just helps you farm a little bit quicker. But for the most part, you're buying Blink as one of the first two items. And this is why it can feel kind of expensive because 2,250 gold at, 12, 15, even 20 minutes in the game can be fairly expensive. Maybe at 30, 40 minutes, it's pretty easy to save up this amount of gold, especially when you're getting more gold from kills. You just have way more ways to clear through creep waves and clear through the jungle. That's not as big of a deal. But because you're mostly buying Blink relatively early, that can make it kind of expensive. But then there are those heroes like maybe Jug who doesn't necessarily have to buy Blink. And so you might buy Blink on that hero as like a fourth item because you're buying farming items like maybe Mjolnir, or you're buying Battle Fury first, then maybe you're buying Manta or some other, survivability item. And it's not until you get more damage, you kind of, have everything that you need, and you're just buying that extra mobility like Blink to just get off a big ult early, and you don't really want it as a first or second item because it doesn't speed up your farm or make you tanky or anything like that. And so there are rare cases where Blink is like a later game item or like a mid to later game item because you don't need it, but it is luxury, once you get to that point where you have the other items that you really need on that specific hero. And I think Jug is like a perfect example. There aren't too many heroes that are like that though. And then the last thing I'll mention about Blink is you can see it upgrades into 3 different Blinks here, which is important because this was introduced a few years ago, which makes Blink not feel like a bad item when it's in your inventory for the entire game. Because in the past, you would buy this item, second item, first item, whatever, and then, 50, 60 minutes would roll around sometimes. It's like, this item doesn't feel very good. Well, now you can kind of, for an expensive fee, upgrade it to one of these bigger Blinks that does more. So if you buy Blink, you're going to have it for the entire game. It's just a matter of when do you upgrade it to that next thing, that, big Swift Blink or overwhelming Blink or arcane Blink, but that's not to like 50, 60 minutes plus when it's like super late game, you don't really have anything else to spend your money on. For the most part, you're just going to be having Blink in your inventory for most of the game. It's very, very rare that you're not going to have Blink in your inventory if you buy it, unless maybe you're a hero that has Blink and you have Aegis and you're just going to siege high ground. You don't need that, initiation or that mobility because you're just going to be standing there hitting towers. That's kind of the only time I would ever think you would put Blink in your backpack or not have it in your inventory if you buy it. And that, everyone, is Blink Dagger. I hope this helped you better understand the item and when to buy it. As always, guys, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.